Well, it's a big day for South Africa's president. Cyril Ramaphosa is hosting Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta at the Union Buildings, not the Kenyan buildings, the Union Buildings, this morning on a state visit. Hello to you, Masego Rahlaga, out for us in Pretoria this morning, and lots of rain overnight. The vacuum cleaners still going in the background. Any idea if they've started having breakfast yet? I'm always curious. What do two presidents have for breakfast?
Were you trying to give our union buildings to the Kenyan people, Gareth, this morning? But anyway, I don't know what they're having for breakfast, to be honest with you, but I imagine that it's delicious food. But we know that our president is one of those healthy presidents who usually goes for jogs. You've seen South Africans take selfies with him when he's in Cape Town. So I'm assuming maybe it's a very healthy breakfast. But you're quite right, Gareth, and my colleague Joe Komane will show you cleanup operations still underway. They keep coming back to the same spot. So the rain caused, the red carpet to be quite wet, and we need to avoid a scenario where an official falls. We've seen that happen before with the former president of Zimbabwe, and it won't be fun. But also, let's show you just in the middle of the Union Buildings upstairs here is exactly where things are going to happen. So the officials will be walking down from upstairs, and then they'll come in. The South African officials will be flanking the president from this side that is closest to us, Gareth. And then on the other side, it'll be the delegation from Kenya with President Uhuru Kenyatta. The two heads of states will be right there in the middle under that shelter. And that's where we'll have photo opportunities. That's where they'll, give us a few smiles and, a few poses. That's usually what happens when there's a presidential visit here at the Union Buildings. But I do still have with me the professor of politics at the University of South Africa, Dirk Coetzee. Professor Dirk Coetzee is still here with us. Professor, thank you for your time. What could come out of this meeting? I mean, I'm sure the Kenyan government will try and see if South Africa will let them export more products here and maybe let them have more businesses in this country.
Yes, I think that is the immediate target, or the immediate objective, is to tighten the relationships between the two countries, especially from an economic or a trade point of view. But I think there's another aspect which is not so much on the agenda, but I think they will definitely discuss that. If you look at the map, Kenya is is next to Somalia, Ethiopia and South Sudan. All three countries that are, in terms of security, at that stage in a very difficult situation, especially Ethiopia. And I very much anticipate that they are going to talk about Ethiopia and that relations with Ethiopia and what the African Union specifically will have to do. President Kenyatta was recently in Ethiopia, and therefore I think it's going to be a burning issue in these discussions.
And of course, tomorrow they'll also be visiting Home Affairs. I wonder what they'll be discussing there, because as far as I understand, we don't need a visa to go that side, and they don't need a visa coming here.
Yes, it's also difficult to know exactly what they will talk about, but I think it will be about the movement of people. It will be about also how to make it easier for businesses to establish, Kenyan businesses to establish themselves here, and the same with South African businesses there. Because it's not only about tourism and immigration, it's also about business relations that the Home Affairs is involved in. So I think that will be an important point. What they are also going to do, which is interesting, is he will visit the Eastern Cape, and Aspen specifically, which is producing Johnson & Johnson vaccines. And I think this links up with what President Ramaphosa has done when he was the chairperson of the African Union, of trying to improve the possibility of production of vaccines within Africa. So I think this is just the beginning of possibly a much bigger situation in which something similar can also happen in Kenya.
And of course, talking about the vaccines, Africa, our president was one of those who traveled the world trying to get the big world economies to remove patency so that the African countries can also gain access to the vaccine. So I'm sure that will be spoken about, but also, the situation with the two economies that are strong on both sides, and how the pandemic actually affected the two economies.
Yes, I think that will be very much part of the discussion. it will be also, as I said, how African countries can become more self-sufficient under these conditions with vaccines, but also how to improve intra-African relations. And trade specifically. So it's actually a very large agenda that they can talk about. I don't think they will have enough time, but the visit itself is an important one in terms of the symbolism of it.
All right, Professor Dirk Coetzee, let me tell you something, Gareth. I'm actually not alone. I've got my colleague, senior reporter Aviwe Mtila here with me. He's actually not so far from me. He's by those famous stairs where the arrivals will be taking place of the officials that are here. Aviwe, tell us a little bit about the economies of these two countries as well as their history since democracy.
Well, Masego, they enjoy a very cordial relationship when it comes to the economies. I mean, we're expecting the memorandums of cooperation to be signed here when it comes to international cooperation, home affairs as well as tourism. That will give you an insight of how much economically they link and tie together. I mean, they are the biggest economies in their respective regions. In East Africa, Kenya, the biggest there, well, in the SADC region, South Africa being the biggest economy here. And we do understand back in 2020 already, 7.5 billion rands worth of exports were exported to Kenya from South Africa, and in imports coming in standing at around some 330 million rand. That will give you an insight of just the economic ties between these two countries. But in the inception of democracy, the relationship was a bit frosty, Masego, even after the bilateral agreement and the signing basically of just diplomatic ties that were tied in 1992. There were those concerns from the ANC going into democratic South Africa that Kenya did not support, do enough basically to support the liberation struggle. So it was on that basis that there was a bit of tensions, and there's actually an incident that happened back in 1997 that some believe might have fueled those tensions. It was a flight back from Egypt heading back to South Africa with the then state president Nelson Mandela stopping at the Jomo Kenyatta airport. It wasn't an official state visit, Masego, but you'd understand that diplomatic relations suggest that the president had to disembark from that flight and greet the delegation from Kenya. Normally it would be the Minister of Foreign Affairs or the President himself, but an embarrassed South African delegation had to go out, meet the delegation from Kenya and announce that the President was asleep. He was tired at that time traveling back to South Africa. So that left the government of Kenya a bit miffed, and 2 years later it happened, and we understand again, on another visit that wasn't an official state visit from former President Thabo Mbeki. So there was those bit of frostiness going into democratic South Africa, fueled worse back in 2008 when Cyril Ramaphosa, the now president, had to mediate following the violence that happened in Kenya back in 2007. But we do understand that the Kenyan government then rejected that mediation from Ramaphosa, given that at that time he was a businessman. But of course, those relations have now been on amend, and of course, suggestion in 2016 when the then President Jacob Zuma went to visit Kenya, suggesting that he wants to strengthen the ties between the two countries, and we see a very cordial relationship happening this very moment, and we're expecting both state presidents to come down from these stairs that are behind me, and we're expecting an address to the media just not far from where I am on my left, Masego.
Just very quickly, Aviwe, I think we've spotted quite a few of that delegation from South Africa that will be flanking President Cyril Ramaphosa. For instance, I saw the Minister of Defense, Thandi Modise. Have you spotted anyone else?
Yes, he's one of the two people that I've seen actually go up these stairs here. Defense Minister Thandi Modise, flanked by Togo Diza from the African National Congress, going up these stairs as well. One of the few people that we're expecting to be flanking their two state presidents as they'll give that address here, strengthening those relations between the two countries, Masego. We do understand there's a number of visits that Uhuru Kenyatta, the president of Kenya, will be making around the country, even a visit in Gqeberha at the Aspen Pharma Care, just to look how the manufacturing goes there into the COVID-19 vaccines.
All right, senior reporter Aviwe Mtila, as promised, Gareth is with me here at the Union Buildings. We're expecting that the two heads of state will be arriving soon. We know that the other minister, or we're expecting that the other minister that will be here is Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, because they will be going to visit a facility of Transnet. Well, they'll be showing President Uhuru Kenyatta exactly what South Africa can do in terms of infrastructure to improve roads and transport in the Republic of Kenya. I've been there before, Gareth, and I must tell you the traffic there is quite horrible. If you think the traffic in South Africa is terrible, you would know that in Kenya they also need a bit of assistance. So we're expecting a lot to be discussed here today, as you heard from Professor Dirk Coetzee and Aviwe Mtila. We'll still be here throughout the day, so it's back to you for now.
The sun is shining, the carpets are drying. Back to you again later in the day. Looking forward to that. Looking lovely as well you are, Masego Rahlaga and Aviwe Mtila. Not dressed badly himself either, as we wait for the two presidents to meet and speak to us later in the day.